There was a time in human history when one empire ruled more land, more people, and more oceans than any power before or after it. An empire so vast that the sun never set on its territories, because when night fell in one colony, daylight had already reached another. This was not a myth. This was not a legend. This was the British Empire. At its peak, the British Empire controlled nearly 1/4 of the world's land surface and governed over 400 million people, almost 1/4 of the global population at that time. From the bustling streets of London to the villages of India, from the deserts of Africa to the islands of the Caribbean, from icy Canada to distant Australia, British rule touched every corner of the earth. But how did a small island nation rise to dominate the globe? How did it build the most powerful empire in history? And why did this colossal power eventually crumble? Over the next few minutes, we're going to journey back in time. We'll explore the incredible story of the British Empire, its rise, its glory, its controversies, its wealth, and its ultimate fall. We'll uncover the secrets behind its unprecedented expansion, from pioneering trade and technological might to brutal conquest and political maneuvering. We'll look at the key figures who shaped its destiny, the pivotal moments that defined its legacy, and the complex impact it left on the modern world we live in today. This is the complete story of the empire where the sun never set. Join us as we unpack how a small kingdom off the coast of Europe managed to build a global superpower that changed the course of history forever. This is a tale of ambition, innovation, power, and conflict that you won't want to miss. Make sure you resubscribed so you don't miss our deep dive into one of history's most influential empires. Let's get started. Have you ever wondered how a small, rainy island in the North Atlantic became the largest empire in human history? The story isn't what you might expect. It's a tale of ambition, rivalry, and a game-changing bet on the open ocean. Let's rewind to the 1500s. England was the underdog of Europe. While Spain was hauling gold from the Americas and Portugal controlled the lucrative spice routes to Asia, England was, well, just England. A small kingdom on the sidelines, watching its rivals get richer and more powerful. It was surrounded by giants. Spain had a seemingly unbeatable navy. France was a continental superpower, and Portugal had a monopoly on eastern trade. For England, the future looked bleak. It was late to the colonial party, and it seemed like all the good seats were already taken. But England had a secret weapon, ambition, and a very, very smart strategy. Instead of trying to compete on land, where it was outmatched, England looked to the sea. The country began pouring money and resources into building a new kind of navy. Not just bigger, but faster, more agile, and armed with better cannons. English sailors, many of whom started as pirates and privateers, became some of the most skilled and daring seafarers in the world. They learned to fight in the unpredictable waters of the Atlantic, turning their home advantage into a deadly weapon. The ultimate test came in 1588. Spain, furious with English piracy and religious differences, sent its mighty Spanish Armada to invade England. On paper, it was no contest. The Armada was the most powerful naval force the world had ever seen. But the smaller, quicker English ships, combined with a fierce storm, did the unthinkable. They defeated the Armada. This victory sent shockwaves across Europe. The little island had defeated the global giant. This was more than just a military win. It was a psychological turning point. England had proven that it could not only defend itself, but also challenge the established powers. The lesson was clear. Whoever controls the seas controls trade. And whoever controls trade controls the world's wealth. A new formula for power had been discovered. With this newfound confidence and a dominant navy, England set its sights on the globe. The age of the British Empire had just begun. Thanks for watching. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. See you in the next video. How did a small island nation end up ruling a quarter of the world? You might think it was all kings, queens, and massive armies from the start, right? Well, the story of the British Empire is a lot stranger, and it begins not with a crown, but with a contract. Imagine this. It's the year 1600. A group of English businessmen get together. They're not thinking about conquest or glory. They're thinking about one thing: money. Specifically, the incredible profits to be made from the exotic goods of the East, spices like pepper and cinnamon, luxurious silks, and fine cottons were worth a fortune back in Europe. So they form a company. Queen Elizabeth I grants them a royal charter, and the East India Company is born. Its mission was crystal clear: get to Asia, buy low, and sell high. No grand imperial ambitions, no plans for world domination. Just a bunch of merchants on ships, looking to make a deal. They had no armies, no navies, and certainly no intention of running a country. They were simply traders, seeking their fortune on the other side of the world. But here's where things take a wild turn. When the company arrived in India, they found a land of immense wealth, but also of intense political rivalry. The mighty Mughal Empire was beginning to fracture, and local princes and rulers were constantly vying for power. The company's merchants were clever. They saw an opportunity. They started by building trading posts, small forts to protect their goods. Then they began to play the political game. They'd lend money to one prince, offer military support to another, and slowly but surely, they started to gain influence. Hey, you need some help against your rival? Our well-trained soldiers can assist, for a price, of course. Maybe some trading rights? Or a bit of land. This influence grew like a vine. A trading deal here, a political favor there. Soon, the East India Company wasn't just trading in India. It was becoming a power asterisk within asterisk India. To protect their growing interests, they did something unprecedented. They built their own private army. Not a few security guards, but a massive professional fighting force, larger than the official British Army itself. They recruited local soldiers, known as sepoys, and trained them in European military tactics. By the mid-1700s, this business venture had transformed into a military and political powerhouse. A company of shareholders in London was now commanding armies, collecting taxes, and ruling over millions of people in India. It was a corporate takeover on a scale the world had never seen before. The line between merchant and ruler had completely blurred. And this strange, profit-driven empire was just getting started. Thanks for watching. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this incredible journey. See you in the next video. Next up, we're heading to India, the absolute jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Why was it so important? Think about it. Incredible resources, skilled workers, thriving agriculture, and crucial trade routes. India was a massive source of wealth for Britain. British factories ran on Indian cotton. British markets were filled with Indian goods, and even British wars were paid for by Indian taxes. But this prosperity had a dark side. Traditional Indian industries were wiped out, local rulers were overthrown, and crushing taxes led to devastating famines, causing millions to suffer. By 1857, this simmering anger boiled over into the Great Indian Rebellion. Indian soldiers, the sepoys, turned on their British officers, and cities rose up in revolt. Britain eventually crushed the rebellion, but it was a huge wake-up call. The British government took direct control from the East India Company, and Queen Victoria was declared Empress of India, solidifying its status as the most prized possession of the empire. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Imagine this: the 19th century, a continent rich with resources, and European powers in a frantic race to claim a piece of it. This was the scramble for Africa. Britain went head-to-head with France, Germany, and Belgium, all eyeing Africa's immense wealth: gold, diamonds, and rubber. But it wasn't just about riches. It was about power and strategic control. From Egypt and Sudan in the north, down to Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, the British Empire expanded its reach. The Suez Canal, a man-made marvel, became the vital artery connecting Britain directly to its prized colony, India. This strategic shortcut was a game-changer for trade and military might. However, this expansion came at a devastating cost. British rule in Africa was often brutal. Land was seized from local communities, and new borders were drawn right through ancient tribal lands, creating conflicts that linger even now. Any resistance was met with overwhelming force. The legacy of this colonial era is complex, and its deep scars continue to shape the political and social landscape of modern Africa. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more history. So, what was the secret ingredient that made Britain a global superpower? It wasn't just about land or armies. The real game changer was its navy. We're talking about the Royal Navy, the largest and most powerful fleet the world had ever seen. Imagine this. British ships were the masters of the seas. They controlled the world's most critical trade routes, patrolled every major ocean, and essentially owned the global supply chains. If you wanted to ship goods anywhere, you had to deal with them. Pirates, crushed, rival empires trying to expand, blocked, far-flung colonies needing protection. The Navy was there. Britain didn't need to station massive armies everywhere, because its ships did the heavy lifting. That famous song, Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves, it wasn't just a catchy tune, it was a statement of fact. For centuries, the oceans belonged to Britain. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more. How did a tiny island nation become a global superpower? A huge part of the answer lies in its empire in the Industrial Revolution. Imagine a giant global factory. The British Empire brought in raw materials, like cotton from India and sugar from the Caribbean, all harvested in its colonies. Back in Britain, bustling new factories, powered by steam and innovation, turned these raw materials into finished goods. Clothes, machinery, you name it. And where did these products go? They were sold right back to the colonies and across the world. This created a cycle that made Britain incredibly wealthy. Cities like Manchester and London exploded in size, and railways crisscrossed the country, connecting it all. But this progress had a dark side. It was built on the backs of exploited workers in dangerous factories and on the resources of colonies that saw little of the profit. The empire's wealth came at a steep human cost. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more history shorts. Ever wonder how the mighty British Empire started to crack? Let's talk about one of the first major blows, the loss of America. For a long time, America was one of Britain's most prized colonies, but things turned sour. Imagine being taxed heavily, having no say in the government that rules you, and feeling constantly controlled from thousands of miles away. That's exactly how the American colonists felt. By 1776, they'd had enough and declared independence. The war that followed was a huge shock to Britain. They lost. This wasn't just losing land. It was a wake-up call. It proved that even the most powerful empires could be successfully challenged. In a way, Britain learned a lesson from this defeat. For a while, they tightened their grip on their other colonies, determined not to let history repeat itself. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more. By the late 19th century, the British Empire was at the absolute peak of its power. The sun truly never set on its vast territories, and its influence was felt in every corner of the globe. London wasn't just a city. It was the financial capital of the entire world, with its banks and markets dictating global economies. British common law became the blueprint for legal systems far and wide, shaping how justice was administered across continents. And of course, the English language spread like wildfire, becoming the lingua franca of business, diplomacy, and culture. On the surface, it seemed like an empire without equal, an unstoppable force destined to last forever. But even at this zenith of power, beneath the gilded surface, the first subtle cracks were beginning to form, hinting that even the mightiest empires can't last forever. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying this series, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. The turn of the 20th century saw the British Empire at its peak, a global superpower seemingly invincible. But then came 1914, and the start of a conflict that would change everything. World War I. This wasn't just another colonial war. It was a brutal, industrial-scale slaughter that dragged the entire empire into the mud and trenches of Europe. Britain and its colonies fought together, and on paper, they won. But the victory was hollow. The cost was staggering. Millions of young men from across the empire were dead. The nation was buried in debt, its economy shattered. For the first time, the colonies that had sent their sons to die for Britain began to seriously question their loyalty. The war didn't just drain Britain's treasury. It drained its authority. The empire was still vast, but the cracks were beginning to show, and the world would never be the same again. World War II, a conflict that engulfed the globe and changed the course of history forever. For the British Empire, it was the beginning of the end. Britain fought valiantly, standing against tyranny, but this monumental effort came at a staggering cost. The nation was economically devastated, its coffers drained, and its military stretched to the breaking point. The war had exposed the empire's vulnerabilities. Across the world, the colonies that had once been the jewels in Britain's crown were stirring. The call for freedom grew louder and more insistent. India, the largest and most significant colony, led the charge. After decades of struggle, India finally achieved its independence in 1947. This was the domino that started it all. Inspired by India's success, other colonies demanded their own sovereignty. One by one, they broke away. The once mighty empire, which took centuries to build, crumbled in just a few short decades. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more history. Imagine a world map, vast and colored almost entirely in pink. That was the British Empire at its peak. But by the late 20th century, that map had changed completely. The pink had faded, replaced by the vibrant colors of new independent nations. The winds of change had swept across the globe, and the age of empires was drawing to a close. So, what happened? The story of the empire's end isn't one single event, but a complex series of movements, struggles, and negotiations. From India's powerful independence movement to the calls for self-governance across Africa and the Caribbean, people were demanding their freedom. Britain, weakened by 2 world wars, found it could no longer hold onto its vast territories. What rose from the ashes wasn't a void, but something new, the Commonwealth. This wasn't about rule, but about voluntary cooperation between equals. Britain was no longer a global ruler. It was a nation among nations, finding its new place in a transformed world. Thanks for watching. The British Empire truly changed the world forever. It spread the English language, legal systems, and global trade networks that still shape our lives today. But we can't ignore the dark side. This expansion also brought immense exploitation, the destruction of countless cultures, and left behind conflicts that still simmer in many parts of the globe. It was a story of immense power, baffling complexity, and ultimately, it was a deeply human story, filled with both ambition and cruelty. The empire where the sun never set finally saw its night fall. Empires don't rise because they're eternal. They rise because people believe they are. And when that belief finally crumbles, even the mightiest empire will face its end. What do you think is its most lasting legacy? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.